Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Welcome, welcome, welcome on this Wednesday evening, day, morning. I don't think it would be morning for anyone right now. Trying to do my time math here. I'm horrible at time math. I don't think it's Wednesday morning for anyone right now. So welcome on this Wednesday day. I hope everyone is doing well. It's been, the news has been horrible, just horrible lately. It can be a drain on people, so I appreciate you for coming out because it's not like my topics are all that cheery. I have picked one that's kind of like on the lighter side. It should be fun, but it will completely demonetize this video to talk about it. We'll get to it. So what I've done this time is I've actually narrowed it down to 4 topics. I'm going to try to keep this stream down to 4 topics. Yep, I can do that because I am trying to keep them around 2 hours. Because I put a lot of work into these. And for every live stream I do and then I chop it up and start making the little segment videos of it, that's like another day's work. So 3 live streams a week actually means like 6 work days. And I'm not getting that much from Google AdSense yet. You know, my day may come, my channel may pick up, and then this can become a more reliable source of income. It's one of the things where you have to put a lot of time and effort into it in hopes that one day will pay off. And really the only way you can stick with it for as long as I have up to this point is because you believe in the purpose of it. You know, I believe in what I'm doing, you know, spreading the progressive message, trying to get news out there, trying to inform Canadians of Canadian politics and shenanigans and everything that's going on. And sometimes it's nice just to have other people on to give their unique perspectives on the same stories that you've been hearing day in and day out. And sometimes it's nice to have people that you can just commiserate with as we see the world turning into a page in history that, you know, I don't think we ever thought we would live through. We've always read them in historical contexts, you know, genocides and wars, like major world wars and, you know, falling into fascism, the fall of an empire, that sort of thing. We've always, like, you know, it's historical context, it's historical references, and it's in our history books. And I don't think any of us really thought that we would be living through a time that, you know, come the future will be a big, big part of the history books. So, you know, it is important to keep at it, to keep on here, keep doing your thing. For those of you who don't know, I was on the Letter Hack show on Monday. We actually finally had my interview. It was like the second official time I was on. The first time wasn't for the official interview. It was because I was talking about Michael Brooks' book, Against the Web. Book there. I made a video essay about it. Go check it out. And it was close to the anniversary of his passing, and I was on there to chat about the book and Michael Brooks and stuff. And other than that, I've done call-ins, but I've never had my official interview with the Letter Hack yet. So now that has happened. You can go check it out. I had a lot of fun on it. Also, if you haven't checked out my live stream with Bam yet, please go check it out. He had so many great things to say. I wanted to clip like every part of what we were saying, but, you know, algorithm takes precedence with that sort of thing. And unfortunately, his clips aren't doing that well. The shorts are doing great, but the clips of him and me just talking aren't doing that great. So if you can, please just open up another tab, click on it, let it play on mute. You don't even have to watch it just to help those numbers get up, because algorithm is what rules the day in YouTube. Anyway, I've been rambling. Let's check in and see who's in the sandbox. We have Soul Life, MIDI Doctors, Looney Tunes 9000, and my dogs are goth. Thank you so much for coming out. I super appreciate it. So should we just get into it? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out the segues. It's not like I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing this for a while. I should have a better idea of how to do this, but we will get into the news. I'll start with my story about Gaza. Again, I'm not covering the worst of the worst and the horrors, because it's all bad. It's all bad. But this one just, I can't say I'm surprised. So Nina Turner had tweeted this out: shameful, disgusting, cowardly, complicit. There was another UN resolution, and this one was to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. And here's how the Security Council voted. Yeah, can't say I'm all that surprised with this. Like, at least the United Kingdom didn't vote no, they just abstained. That's an improvement. But what I just find so frustrating is that the United States on the Security Council has the power to go against every other nation on there to block this call for a ceasefire. No one country should have that level of power. We always love to say, it's democracy, The United States is democracy. The United Nations, it should be democratically run, democracy where nations vote for, overall global politics and stuff like that. But when you have one country that has the ability to overrule every other country, that's more like a dictatorship and less like a democracy. It's kind of like the United States likes their role of being dictator of the world, which the problem lies in what their motivations are, what their, there's a word in my brain that I can't think of, but it's something like motivation, the word, but those things change over time. Their morals, what they want to get out in the world changes over time. And at one point, the American dream used to be something that a lot of people in the world kind of sought after, because they had this image of the United States being progressive and inclusive and, human rights orientated and stuff. Of course, those of us who are plugged into politics knows that was never the case. But that was the image that they were at least trying to get out there. And I think in a lot of cases it helped. But now that image that they're kind of putting out there is pro-genocide. But really that's just the United States showing their true colors. It's always been a part of the United States. It's always been a part of Canada and all the settler colonial countries. And now that they're not in agreement with the rest of the world, they still have that power to overrule everyone. And it's not right. No one country should have that much power over the rest of the world. Because I tell you, if this was not the United States and the United States was in here and that was China, I think a lot of people in the United States wouldn't really like this dynamic. But let's get a little bit more into the details of this. Oh, that's super tiny on the screen. Let me make that bigger for you guys. There we go. That should be better. So from Reuters, U.S. blocks ceasefire call with third UN veto in Israel-Hamas war. It's not a war. It's a war would imply it's two-sided at this, and it's not. It really isn't. Also, it's not two nations at war. Hamas is not a nation. It's just a group of people within Gaza, within the Palestinian people, but they don't represent all of Gaza or all of Palestinian people. So to call it a war is a little, but you know, they love that framing, war on terror type thing the United States used to do. But anyway, on to the article. The United States on Tuesday again vetoed a draft United Nations Security Council resolution on the Israel-Hamas war, blocking a demand for immediate humanitarian ceasefire as it instead pushes the 15-member body to call for a temporary ceasefire linked to the release of hostages held by Hamas. Yes, it's all about the hostages held by Hamas. And do you know what would really, really help those hostages? A ceasefire. Last time a whole bunch of hostages were returned was during a ceasefire. And also it would just benefit them in that they wouldn't risk dying, because a lot of those hostages are being killed by the IDF attacking Gaza. They're being very indiscriminate on who they target, and quite often their own hostages that they keep on saying they want returned often are in the crossfire of, what they're aiming for, which is pretty much just anyone. 13 council members voted in favor of the Algerian drafted text while Britain abstained. It was the third U.S. veto of a draft resolution since the start of the current fighting on October 7th. Washington has also used its veto to block an amendment to a draft resolution in December. So this is a pattern. It's the United States inserting, or, not inserting, applying its power, its dominance, its ability to block over and over and over again the same type of measure that they're trying to call on, a ceasefire. And here's something that the United States isn't really cluing into. If they keep on pushing back and saying this is necessary, and you have all the other members of this council saying this is necessary, and they're still not listening, then that is willful participation in this genocide at this point. It is nothing short of them willfully participating in this, because they've had the opportunity plenty of times to not even make it about them. The United States alone has the power to do something about this, but they could at least cover it by saying, well, it was the entire United Nations Security Council that voted this way, and we were just voting along with them, so it wasn't just us telling Israel that they need to stop doing what they're doing. No, they just keep on blocking this over and over again, and, making it so any other nation trying to push back can't. So at this point, there's no way around it. The United States is participating in this. Canada is too, to some extent, but not nearly as bad as the United States, because Canada has at least said a ceasefire is needed. They haven't exactly called for one. They just said it's needed, but they haven't said, Israel, stop doing what you're doing. They also haven't stopped sending weapons and, money and all that sort of stuff. So Canada still has a lot to answer for in this. The United States, like with most things, is just worse. A vote in favor of this draft resolution in support of the Palestinians' right to life. Conversely, voting against it implies an endorsement of the brutal violence and collective punishment inflicted upon them, Algeria's UN ambassador Amar told the council before the vote. U.S. ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, signaled on Saturday that the U.S. would veto the draft resolution over concerns it jeopardizes talks between the U.S., Egypt, Israel, and Qatar. that seek to broker a pause in the war and release hostages by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So a call for a ceasefire jeopardizes them working to call for a ceasefire, if I'm reading that correctly. The United States is worried that if the UN calls for a ceasefire, then that would, interrupt their behind the doors, behind the curtains working of trying to call for a ceasefire. Yeah, I get how that works. You don't want to call for a ceasefire because that might cause a ceasefire. And while they're trying to broker for a ceasefire, so that might interrupt their attempt to get one. Yeah. Demanding an immediate, unconditional ceasefire without an agreement requiring Hamas to release the hostages will not bring about a durable peace. Instead, it could extend the fighting between Hamas and Israel, Thomas Greenfield told the council ahead of the vote. Although, as I stated before, and as was proven, it's during the ceasefire that a whole bunch of hostages were actually returned. That's when it's actually safe for that to happen. Because right now, if the hostages even try to escape and approach the IDF, they get shot. The Algerian drafted resolution vetoed by the U.S. did not link a ceasefire to the release of the hostages. It separately demanded an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and immediate unconditional release of all hostages. So they didn't link it, but they asked for it. The message given today to Israel with this veto is that it can continue to get away with murder, Palestinian UN envoy, I'm not sure how to say that name, sorry, told the council. UN ambassador Gilad said the word ceasefire was being mentioned as if it is a silver bullet, a magical solution to all the region's problems. And nobody is saying that about a ceasefire. Nobody says that a ceasefire is a magical bullet to end all the problems in what's happening over there. But, that's Israel saying that, of course, it's not going to be that, so why bother? A ceasefire achieves one thing and one thing only, the survival of Hamas. That person told the council. A ceasefire is the death sentence for many more Israelis and Gazans, as opposed to what's currently happening, which is just continued bombing and slaughtering of people in Gaza. So, a ceasefire would continue that, encourage that, apparently, according to Israel. Not how that works. Temporary ceasefire. The U.S. has now proposed a revival draft resolution calling for a temporary ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war and opposing a major ground offensive by its ally Israel in Rafah, according to the text seen by Reuters on Monday. It says it plans to allow time for negotiations and will not rush to a vote. Yeah, so they're holding their breath in hopes that the United States will come out with its own resolution calling for a ceasefire eventually someday. And, there's no rush for it. Like, what's on the line here? What's at stake? You shouldn't have to rush these things. You want to make sure that it's worded properly and all that sort of, like, what's the worst that could happen if they just wait a few more days? Yeah, it is. It needed to be called a long time ago. And every day that there's not a ceasefire is just more and more casualties of this war. And we're not talking about the IDF. It's all innocent people in Gaza that are being slaughtered. And every delay means more people will die that didn't have to die. And none of them should be dying. Until now, Washington has been adverse to the word ceasefire in any UN action on the Israel-Hamas war. But the U.S. text echoes language that President Joe Biden said he used last week in conversations with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah, so he said this. He said, you shouldn't do that, but not doing anything to actually make that happen. He said harsh words, I'm sure, to Benjamin Netanyahu behind closed doors. Yeah, gave him a piece of his mind, I'm sure. That doesn't exactly help the people suffering in Gaza. The U.S. draft resolution would see the Security Council underscore its support for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza as soon as practicable, based on the formula of all hostages being released, and calls for lifting of all barriers to the provisions of humanitarian assistance at scale. This is the second time since October 7th that Washington has proposed a Security Council resolution on Gaza. Russia and China vetoed its first attempt in late October. Washington traditionally shields Israel from UN action, but it also has abstained twice during the Council to adopt resolutions that aim to boost aid to Gaza and call for extended pauses in fighting. Oh, so it adopted a resolution that aimed to... It abstained. The United States abstained to adopt a resolution to boost aid to Gaza, but then, they went and defunded UNRWA, the primary way that aid would get to the people in Gaza. So they didn't even vote in favor of it. They just said, we're not going to say anything on this. But then their actions showed what they really cared about, and that is just to let the people suffer. And call for extended pauses in fighting. Yeah, it would help if there was a pause. And again, fighting sounds so two-sided in this. It's not like Hamas is launching a counteroffensive here. They don't have the ability, they don't have the means. There might be little skirmishes within Gaza, I'm sure, but who's to say that they're not just innocent people trying to defend their homes that then get labeled as Hamas? That anyone who tries to fight back gets labeled as Hamas. This isn't a fight, it's a slaughter. The war began when fighters from the Hamas militant group that runs Gaza attacked Israel on October 7th, killing 1,200 people and capturing 253 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. In retaliation, Israel launched a military assault on Gaza that health authorities say has killed nearly 29,000 Palestinians, with thousands more bodies feared lost amid the ruins. So that's just the ones they've been able to count. There's thousands that have been unaccounted for because there's nobody there to count them. Their bodies are buried. In December, more than 3/4 of the 193-member UN General Assembly voted to demand an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. General Assembly resolutions are not binding but carry political weight, reflecting a global view on the war. So horrible, horrible stuff. But let's listen to what the U.S. ambassador actually said to this.
Proceeding with a vote today was wishful and irresponsible. And so while we cannot support a resolution that would put sensitive negotiations in jeopardy.
Yeah, it was irresponsible for people to call a ceasefire right now. Just totally irresponsible to demand that the slaughter ends just for a little bit. Because they have reasons, They're busy doing things. They're busy trying to work towards their own ceasefire. How irresponsible of everyone else to call for one.
We look forward to engaging on a text that we believe will address so many of the concerns we all share, a text that can and should be adopted by the Council so that we can have a temporary ceasefire as soon as practicable, based on the formula of all hostages being released. This
And the best way for the hostages to be released is to have a ceasefire.
temporary ceasefire is critical to getting aid into the hands of Palestinian civilians.
And that's the other thing. They're calling, so what they're working towards right now, let's see, go back, is a temporary ceasefire. They're just basically asking for a pause in the slaughter. You know, not a permanent ceasefire. Oh, no, Israel has its right to defend itself. But, you know, just a temporary one so that we can get aid to people, maybe through what means exactly when you've defunded UNRWA? How exactly is that aid supposed to get out to the millions of people that are becoming more and more desperate by the day?
Critical to getting aid into the hands of Palestinian civilians who desperately need it. We should look towards this text so that we can finally condemn Hamas.
I think a lot of people have already done that. I think Hamas has been condemned quite a bit already. I don't think that what this finally condemn Hamas. It's happened. We've done it. It's been mentioned by everyone.
For their horrific attacks on October 7th, which set this conflict into motion.
Oops. The thing is, that's not exactly what set that conflict into motion. Like, why did Hamas attack? And of course, talking about the whys doesn't justify what they did, of course. But this has been going on for decades. It didn't start on October 7th. This what the Palestinians are fighting against didn't start then. So while this attack happened on October 7th, this did not start on October 7th. And it's very harmful for the United States to keep on, you know, playing into this, letting Israel get away with this. At what point? Like, how bad does it have to get before the United States will finally say something? Like, it's gotten to the point that this country, Canada, has finally said, okay, a ceasefire is needed. Like, you know, it's gotten pretty bad. What will it take for the United States to finally break its connection to Israel with what they're doing, to finally go against what Israel is doing? At this point, I can't imagine it's anything. Because if you've already allowed this to happen, like, what is left? A genocide is happening. It is being committed right now. So what, they're going to wait until after the genocide is completed before they say, oh, yeah, that was pretty bad. Probably shouldn't have done it. Just absolutely disgusting from the United States. Anyway, let's go check the Sandbox. Looks like we have had lots more people jump in. Let's see. BKK, we're the worst. United States, you're talking about the United States. I will not argue that. Zach James, the U.S. hates peace because they love making money selling weapons. I think that's a part of it. It's not the whole story, but I'm pretty sure it is part of it. And Canada also likes selling those weapons. Sold over 28 million sent 28 million in weapons to Israel since October 7th. So we're just as deep into that as the United States. Because keep in mind, the United States is about 10 times the population. Like, it's not quite. We have 40 million here. You guys are what, at 350 million or something like that? So, but if we just go for a 10 to 10 ratio for easy sake, it would be the same as, you know, the United States sending 280 million. Okay, so I know that comparison is a little off, but still, it is. We shouldn't be doing it. Neither of our countries should be doing it. You know, it is one of the cases where doing nothing would benefit so much. Like, we don't have to participate. We don't have to even call for a ceasefire or anything. We can literally just do nothing, and that will help improve the situation. Instead, we keep on running cover for Israel, these countries, Canada and the United States. We keep on sending them weapons, sending them money, sending them aid, sending them people. So we're just as guilty of what's happening over there as they are to some extent, because we're doing nothing to stop it when we have the power to do it. When I say we, I'm talking about our governments, not us individually, of course. I don't know, it just sounds weird. Anyway. Looney Tunes 9000. Also, subscribe to LeftoftheBox for more great content like this. Yes. Oh, looks like we also have a whole bunch more people come and join the chat. Yay! Okay, what did Zach say to what you're replying to? Zach James, the U.S. was founded on genocide, and BCAT-K, Zach 100. Strangely, the three big countries facilitating this genocide were all founded on genocide. Yeah. Canada, founded on genocide. Nina Canadian, wish I could give you more of my watch time, living a busy life. Hey, I'm just appreciated whenever you can come out. I don't have much of a life outside of this, so I have time to do this. And even I am running kind of tight on time for a lot of things that I want to get done. Okay. Oh, let's get back into it. I have a story that I'm going to be covering in some depth. Story that resonates with me for what will become very apparent reasons that has been in the news recently. So, a teenager, 16-year-old in Oklahoma, non-binary child, is now no longer part of this world, in part due to the stochastic terrorism of Chaya Raichik, but, you know, it's not like she'll ever admit to that. She's actually trying to play the victim right now. And yeah, this story hits me hard as somebody who is non-binary for so many different reasons. Like, I look at this poor child, and when I was 16, I didn't know what non-binary was. And they knew who they were. They had that opportunity to express themselves, and for it to be taken away so violently. This hatred, for what? They didn't do anything to anyone. It's all bigotry, hatred, just... So from Aaron Reed, last month I reported that Chaya Raichik, the libs of TikTok, was appointed by Ryan Walters to make schools safer in Oklahoma. That's not exactly working out the way that they had, well, it's working out the way that they had hoped, but it's not exactly making schools safer. 1 month later, a trans teen is dead after a year of transphobic bullying. Their name was Nex. Next was a gender-fluid trans teenager who suffered horrific bullying over their trans identity and is now dead after being beaten in a restroom. Libs of TikTok and Ryan Walters said they'd make students safe. Which students? Just 1 month ago, I wrote on how State Superintendent Ryan Walters, who himself has been viciously anti-trans, appointed Libs of TikTok as part of a plan to make schools safer. Ravana was on my live stream, and we talked about this when it first happened, that, you know, the place where she had bomb threats sent to, you know, got them to be targeted with bomb threats, the Oklahoma School District and all that sort of stuff, then turned around and hired her to be part of their council. I was surprised to find out that these days that's how you apply for jobs, is to, you know, send in bomb threats. And this is the letter from the superintendent, Ryan Walters. No one has done more to expose what the radical left is all about than Chaya Raichik and Libs of TikTok. Hers is a powerful voice to protect Oklahoma kids from porn in schools and woke indoctrination. I'm proud to have her on our team. I don't see how she has anything to do with porn in schools, because being queer does not mean porn. That they're not connected. That's not how that works. Libs of TikTok Chaya Raichik has famously often had violent threats and bomb threats follow her posts. She posed proudly with a paper pointing it out. How could this have gone any differently? One of the very first teachers targeted by Libs of TikTok was Nex's favorite teacher in 2022. Meanwhile, the Oklahoma Department of Education under Ryan Walters put out a video calling trans people unsafe in bathrooms and trans bathrooms access an assault on truth. How could this have gone any differently? When language like this is used, what happens next? Legislatures in Oklahoma have done the same. Senator Jett compared parents of trans kids to those who kill their kids. Next will be buried, we have learned today, under their name, their right name, the same name that legislators, hate influencers, and the superintendent of Oklahoma tried to erase. 25 years ago, another LGBTQ plus student was killed. He also succumbed to a head injury 6 days later. That student was Matthew Shepard, and his death changed society. It took some time. How many more trans people have to die for their deaths to do the same? How many more young people have to die? How many more Eden Knights? How many more Brianna Gays? How many more Ariana Mitchells? And you can find the family's GoFundMe. I'll try to remember to put a link to that in the description box. And yes, Erin Reed is a transgender journalist. If you can, please subscribe to her Substack. So the serfs had tweeted this out. Chaya Raichik, Libs of TikTok, is trying to downplay her own work. She didn't just post a TikTok, she labeled a teacher as a groomer without any evidence. Now that a non-binary student who admired the teacher was killed, she's trying to walk it back. I'm not entirely sure how to say the high school's name. I think it's Owasso. So I'm just going to go with Owasso. I'm sorry if I'm getting it wrong, but I am horrible with names. The Independent is now claiming the deceased student greatly admired the teacher I posted about 2 years ago. They're literally now just making fun of stuff, hoping their readers, they're literally just making stuff up, hoping their readers believe it. Unbelievable. Chaya Raichik famously makes stuff up for people to believe. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who follow her do tend to believe all the bullshit she posts. Trans activists are now spreading the lie that I'm responsible for a non-binary teen getting killed at school because 2 years ago I posted a TikTok from a teacher in that school. They're lying about me to incite one of the followers to physically harm me. That's their goal. You see, it's already worked the other way around, Chaya. You've been inciting hatred. You've been the stochastic terrorist. And now that that has played out, you're trying to claim victim? And from the Libs of TikTok account, if your parents don't accept you for who you are, fuck them. I'm your parents now. Oklahoma middle school teacher. This teacher was let go last week after complaints of grooming, and this TikTok, others containing questionable content, were brought to the principal's attention. So unwarrantedly labeled somebody as a groomer, and that teacher was eventually had to leave their job. A teacher that this student admired. And so we got a thread here from Alejandra Caraballo. In now deleted tweets, Lib of TikTok previously targeted this school district and got a middle school teacher fired for being supportive of LGBTQ students. She also incited bomb threats in a nearby Tulsa school for weeks. She's now appointed to oversee book banning in Oklahoma. So a non-binary teenager was brutally beaten to death in Oklahoma school by their classmates in the school bathroom. And the details of that are quite horrific. So content warning going forward as I get more into this story. So the local news source dead names and misgenders them. No other media has investigated this thoroughly. The school did nothing and did not call an ambulance. The next day, died the next day in the hospital. In now deleted tweets, Live though TikTok previously targeted school, as we know. And the full interview with the mother is heartbreaking, and we will get to that article in just one moment. So next, Benedict, a 16-year-old non-binary citizen of the Cherokee Nation, was beaten up at a high school and died the next day. The anti-2S LGBTQ principal and teachers didn't even call an ambulance or the cops. Next Benedict should still be alive. Next deserve not only a safe and nurturing environment to learn, but an environment that actively disrupted anti-2S T, and C+ rhetoric and worked to ensure the vulnerable students were safe. Yeah, it is. This beautiful child. And yet the right will always just time after time say, wasn't us. You know, we might have targeted the school, we might have called them groomers, we might have been insinuated that they were harming children in all ways that you can imagine. But the fact that this child was then beat up for living their life, for just being who they were, well, that had nothing to do with us. This is the goal. And, you know, should the Republicans get into power with Project 2025 on the way, it's going to get worse. Even here in Canada, there was a recent article I covered in the last live stream where CSIS, our intelligence services, says there's most likely going to be more attacks on people like me, non-binary people, gender queer people, LGBTQ plus people, because the stochastic terrorism keeps on ramping up because our conservatives, the Republicans, keep on playing into the right-wing rhetoric. The Premier of Alberta bringing Tucker Carlson on stage. Tucker Carlson has been an influence to a lot of these hate-motivated attacks. And yet, that's who the right is putting up on a pedestal, saying this is where we need to go. And they do this to rile up their base. And what do you think happens when they do this? When they constantly fill the heads of these people that queer folks are dangerous, that they're out to harm your children, that if you want to keep your kids safe, you have to do something about it. What do you think happens? This sort of tragedy happens. So this is from The Independent. Oklahoma banned trans students from its bathrooms. Now a bully student is dead after a fight. Saying it's a fight, too, is also, again, one-sided. They were assaulted and beaten. Whenever Oklahoma teenager Nex Benedict was bullied at school for being transgender, their mother, Sue Benedict, would encourage the 16-year-old to rise above their tormentors. I've said you've got to be strong and look the other way because these people don't know who you are, Miss Benedict told The Independent in a phone interview. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. The bullying had started in earnest at the beginning of 2023 school year, a few months after Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt signed a bill that required public school students to use the bathrooms that matched their sex listed on their birth certificates. The sex on my birth certificate is X. Actually got that legally changed. So how would this apply to me? A few weeks ago, on 7th of February, the bullying allegedly erupted into violence when Nex suffered severe head injuries during a physical altercation at the Owasso High School, according to Owasso Police Department. Sue Benedict told The Independent she was called to school that day to find Nex badly beaten with bruises all over their face and their eyes, with the scratches on the back of their head. Nex told her that they and another transgender student at Owasso High School had been in a fight with 3 older girls in the bathroom. Nex was knocked to the ground during the fight, hit their head on the floor, according to their mother. Miss Benedict said she was furious that the school had failed to call an ambulance or the police. She said the school then informed her Nex was being suspended for 2 weeks. So no ambulance when a student hit their head on the floor, even though I'm sure they know of this thing called concussions, and then that could be quite horrible, or that it should be checked out when this type of assault happens. So the adults in the situation stood by and do nothing, and in fact punished that student, suspended them for being a target of hate. She took Nex to Bailey Medical Center in Owasso for treatment. They spoke to a police school resource officer at the medical facility and were discharged. That night, Nex went to bed with a sore head and eventually fell asleep while listening to music, Miss Benedict said. On 8 February, Nex was getting ready to go to Tulsa with Miss Benedict for an appointment when they collapsed in the family living room. Miss Benedict called an ambulance and EMT officers arrived to find Nex had stopped breathing. Nex was declared dead that evening in the hospital. In a statement, the Owasso Police Department said they were conducting a very active and thorough investigation of the time and the events that led up to the death of the student. Owasso PD spokesperson Nick Boatman told The Independent that police were awaiting results of toxicology and autopsy report from the Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office before determining whether anyone will be charged. Mr. Boatman said all charges will be on the table once a cause of death was confirmed. I'd love to see the people who were, the cause of death to actually be punished for this. To see Chaya actually held accountable for all the hate that she's been spreading, for all the stochastic terrorism that she's been doing, for all the harm she has caused. Instead, the Oklahoma School Board rewarded her with a job to protect students that she was targeting. Like, this shouldn't make sense in a world where we want to be inclusive, where we want to grow and develop. Like, this doesn't make any sense for this world when objectively people know what's happened is wrong. And yet, so often, the right wing gets away with it over and over again, causing harm, they're the inspiration for mass shootings all the time. And yet, nothing has been done to reel that in. The governments just shy away. They're too afraid that the right will say, you're trying to suppress our freedom of speech. Should they do anything to try to control what's happening on the right? Instead, the right is just free to keep on getting as bad as it wants. An Owasso Police public school spokesperson declined to provide the information about the assault or the school's response when contacted by the Independent, citing the active police investigation. Let's see, actually, can I make this a bit bigger for you guys? There. LGBTQ advocacy group have described Nex's death as a hate crime and linked it to the hateful rhetoric spewed by the leaders in our state and the Libs of TikTok account run by far-right social media influencer Chaya Raichik. Ms. Raichik, a New York-based former real estate agent, became a cause celebre among conservatives for using her Libs of TikTok account, I think they mean celebrity, to post and edited anti-trans videos that target public school teachers and librarians. An Owasso high school teacher who Nex had greatly admired resigned in 2022 after they were featured in one of Ms. Raichik's posts. So a person who Nex looked up to, admired, somebody who supported Nex for who they were, was forced to leave their job due to this targeted hate. Whenever you lose a teacher like that, the school becomes less safe for LGBTQ plus students. Because not all teachers are supportive. Not all teachers will be there for queer students. So when you're in a supportive environment, to have one, it goes such a long way to keeping queer students from harm. It keeps them from harm. To have that support, to have that acknowledgement, to have that place that they can go to be safe, especially for students that don't have that safety at home. Next had that safety at home. They were one of the lucky ones. But so many students, so many children don't have that safety at home. And then to go to school and have teachers that you can feel safe and supported with, then be forced to leave their jobs, make schools less safe for them, and then they have nowhere else to go. Ms. Raichik did not respond to a request or a comment by the Independent on X. She denied any link to the cause to the death and said she was unjustly blamed for a murder. Yeah. Raichik claiming victim in this one. Like, oh no. Like, I only had the school targeted and her teacher had to step down because of all the harassment and stuff that they were sending. And then, I actually got hired onto the school board there in all my anti-trans stances and the push to have, transgender bathroom bills put in place and all that sort of stuff, but I had nothing to do with this. Yeah. When you're old school, you don't always understand it. Like many parents, Sue Benedict and her husband Walter at times struggled to understand the nuances of Nex's gendered fluidity. Miss Benedict is Nex's biological grandmother and raised them since they were 2 months old, along with 5 other children. She formally adopted Nex a few years ago. She told The Independent that Nex was always understanding if she used an incorrect pronoun or called Nex by their birth name. Nex did not see themselves as male or female, Miss Benedict said. Nex saw themselves right down the middle. I was still learning about it. Nex was teaching me that. When you're old school, you don't always understand it, her husband Walter told The Independent. But it would be very boring if we were all the same. It's on the inside that matters the most. Next, Benedict with their cat Zeus, straight A student, was going places, their mother said. The family, who traced part of their roots to the Choctaw Nation, encouraged open discussion about questions of gender and identity. I was very open with my children to be who and what they thought was best, Miss Benedict said. They could talk to me about anything as long as they respect goes both ways. A child needs to figure out who they are and what they want to be, and you cannot force it upon them. This is something a lot of people on the right struggle to understand because they are always about parental rights. And it's like, no, you have a responsibility to children. You don't have rights over your children. And one of those responsibilities is to help that child figure out who they are. But the right gets so upset when their children become anything they don't want them to be, that the parents want programmed for them. The parents state, this is why I brought you into the world. This is my image of what you should be. And if you're anything other than that, well then. The right just doesn't seem to understand that children are people. They're individuals. They have, their own sense of who they are, of what they want to be, separate from what their parents are. But so much of this hate in the schools and the book bannings and the bills and the don't say gay stuff is all about parents wanting to force their children to conform to something they're not. To force them to conform to what the parents want them to be instead of respecting who the child is and allowing them to explore that. Nex's sister, Malila, who is also a member of the LGBTQ community, told The Independent in an interview that Nex's fluid gender identity was not an issue nor anything that anybody cared about within the family. Nex was very, very fortunate to have a family like that. Nex was a straight-A student who enjoyed drawing, reading, playing video games, Ark and Minecraft, and was devoted to their cat Zeus, Miss Benedict said. I was so proud of Nex. They were going someplace. They were so free, she said. All the potential of who this child was, who they were going to be, it's gone. Because some people didn't like the bathroom they were in or felt that they should be conformed to a specific gender. Because Nex dared to be something other than what they were comfortable with. That Nex dared to be themselves. In April 2022, Owasso High School teacher Tyler Wren was featured in a surreptitiously filmed libs a TikTok post telling students, if your parents don't accept you for who you are, F them. The incident sparked backlash in the small Oklahoma city of 40,000 residents, and Mr. Rinn resigned from Owasso public school system. Next was very angry about it, Ms. Benedict said. Ms. Benedict said that the teacher who encouraged debate about gender issues were not promoting sexualized content. They were allowing the students to be who they are. Ms. Benedict said she first became aware that Next was being bullied at school in early 2023. They'd go straight to their room and put it on their radio, and I'd say, okay, you gotta decompress for a little bit, and then come out of it and talk about it. Ms. Benedict said she remains furious at the school for failing to call police or seek medical attention for Next, and wants to see children who allegedly assaulted Next punished. This was a failure of all the adults in the school. To not call an ambulance, to not inform the parents of what happened. That is their responsibility. You know, if they're teachers and principals and stuff at the school, their responsibility to the children is to keep them safe, is to make sure that they get the medical attention they need. And they failed to do that, and because of that, a child died. I can't imagine what it's like for their mother. The guilt that she must be feeling. So many people push kids to be one thing, and you've got to let them find themselves and be who they should be, Miss Benedict said. Society has got to see them as they are, accept them, and go on, because we are all people. See, this type of stuff was never really talked about, never mentioned when I was in high school. This idea of just being who you are, or even knowing that non-binary was an option that wasn't... Let me just switch screens for a moment. As doomer as all of this seems, I think people need to be reminded of how far we have come. To be able to have these discussions, to be able to have this language, to be able to have students that can express themselves, to have safe homes, to have parents who might not understand but be trying to. This wasn't a thing when I was a teenager. We have come so far in the past couple decades when it comes to acceptance, when it comes to understanding, when it comes to people being able to express who they are. And the statistics show it. 20% of children, Gen Z, identify LGBTQ+, because they're finally allowed to express who they are. See, I've always been non-binary, but if you were to give me a quiz or some sort of survey back when I was in high school, I wouldn't have said that because I wouldn't have even known what that meant or how it could be a thing. But as we become more accepting, the hateful people, the people that want society to conform to their rigid stereotypes, they're going to start lashing out even harder. And it's one of the things where we have to keep on going. We have to keep on pushing forward, because it's not as simple as 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's more like 5 steps forward and 4 steps back. But we are gaining ground. We are winning in the end. And it's to the place now where so many people now know the truth. Now know what it means to be non-binary. Now know what it means to be transgender, to be queer. So many young people have learned it and accepted it and identified with it and have been free to express themselves, that there's no going back at this point. You can't put that many people back in the closet. You can't uneducate them once they know this stuff, you can't take that away from them. So there is no going back to what these right-wingers want, which is why they have to become more authoritarian, why they have to become more brutal. Because free to live our lives, there is no going back to what society thought it was 50 years ago. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that so many young people are free to express themselves. Like, I was fortunate that when I was in high school, I could tell my mom, it's like, I'm definitely interested in boys, but I haven't ruled out girls. And my mom had zero problem with it. If I was still with my stepfather at that time, might have been a few more issues. But even as I got older, and I was in a relationship with my girlfriend, and she had a husband, and we're polyamorous, and I told my mom about it, and my mom didn't necessarily understand it, but because I mentioned, it's like, oh yes, I have a girlfriend, and she has a husband, and my mom was like, and he knows? I'm like, oh yeah, he has a girlfriend too, another girlfriend. and my mom didn't understand it, but she tried her best to accept it. And when I've explained myself as non-binary, again, my mom didn't necessarily understand it, but what she does understand is that there's too much, what's the word? Too much something put on gender, too much emphasis put on gender. That, why do people have to mark their gender on their driver's license? Why do gender bathrooms even really matter when you're going into stalls or it's a single-use washroom or something of that sort? Why does it matter what gender you are when you're in a different profession or that sort of thing? Like, why does it matter? And my mom understands that. And so it would probably really trip her up at her age to try to refer to me not as her daughter, but as her child only. But she does try. And even my grandmother that I had, my father's mother out west, she passed away quite some time ago. And she used to write me letters, like actually write me letters. And even before I understood who I was, and even as conservative as she was, she had this moment, this realization, because out west, the family is huge. Unfortunately, I'm not really a part of it. I don't know much of it, but between grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren and stuff, she had like 100 descendants and families and stuff. And she said, with that many people in the family, there's going to be something of everything. And I love them all, no matter what. And she was able to say that even from a conservative mind frame. So it's not just the youth who are changing. The youth are helping, the people of older generations to change, to become more accepting. And that's a good thing. So as sad as this story is, as dire as the situation is becoming, with all the legislation in the states, with the threats of more harm, we have to remember we are winning. We are becoming more accepting. We are becoming more free to be who we are. That the freedom to express who we are, that people are learning at a younger age. And they'll never be able to take that away. So it's important that we keep on fighting back, that we keep on standing strong. And we acknowledge these stories and we go over these stories and we call out the right for what they are. But just know we are winning. Positive, progressive change. It's happening. So don't give up hope. Don't get all doomerism. But it's still important to acknowledge these stories and, go over the cause and the share and Just acknowledge this beautiful child for who they were. Woke ideology. So back to the Independent article here. Last August, a Libs of TikTok post was showing an edited video critical of a public school librarian in Tulsa that led to several consecutive days of bomb threats to schools in the district. Ms. Raichik's anti-LGBTQ posts have been linked to nearly 36 threats made towards school, libraries, hospitals, and businesses across 16 states, according to a recent NBC News investigation. So you see, the thing is that Chaya Raichik likes to claim like, oh, it's not me, I'm the victim in all of this. Yet nearly 36 threats? If I said anything that led to one threat, I'd be reevaluating what I said. Instead, Chaya Raichik is very proud of the work that she's done. She brags about it. So for her to now claim victim is absurd. She knows exactly what she's doing. And partly she's doing this because if it wasn't for the attention she was getting for all of this hate that she's spreading around, she is so unspectacular. She is such a boring, nothing person. No personality, nothing to offer anyone. This is her only way to get noticed, to be relevant. And she's doing it at the cost of the lives of other people. Last month, Oklahoma's Republican Superintendent of Public School, Ryan Walters, appointed Ms. Raichik to the state's Library Advisory Committee. Mr. Walters has not commented publicly on Nex's death. He put out a video on President's Day decrying radical woke college professors for placing Donald Trump at the bottom of a list of United States' greatest presidents. We judge presidents by outcomes, not woke ideology, he said. And I'm pretty sure that he was at the bottom of the list because they were judging by outcomes. Freedom Oklahoma, an LGBTQ advocacy group, blamed Oklahoma lawmakers and Ms. Raichik for promoting bigotry and intolerance towards trans students after Nex's death. Yeah, here's just a little aside. It's always good when you hear a name of an organization to read a little bit more into it before you make a judgment, because when I hear something like Freedom Oklahoma, I'm thinking that's a right-wing organization. Just given all the Freedom Convoy stuff up here. Kind of like the Rational National, you know, when you first hear the name of that channel, you might think, that sounds right-wing, but it's actually very left-wing. It's just always important to read into any organization, any group, any article before making judgments on people. The group said that Ms. Raichik continues to use her platform in a way that leads others to threaten real harm at Oklahoma kids. We want to be clear whether Nex died as a direct result of injuries sustained in the brutal hate-motivated attack at school or not. Nex's death is a result of being the target of physical and emotional harm because of who Nex was, the group wrote. Nex had a light in them that was so bright, that was so big. Since Nex's death, Miss Benedict said she barely slept and been walking in a blur. When it came time to place an obituary... Okay, let me start the sentence over. When it came time to place an obituary, Miss Benedict said she had provided Nex's birth name by accident. This has led to some media coverage of Nex's death using her birth name or dead name. When you are going through something like this and you lose a child, you're not thinking, right, we're getting a headstone done and Nex will be on there, she said. Nex's funeral was held at the Maori funeral service on 15th of February. After the service, police officers from Owasso and the neighboring city of Collinsville accompanied members of the local chapters of Bikers Against Child Abuse as they provided an escort from the service to the graveside. Yeah, so for people who don't know, Bikers Against Child Abuse are bikers, mostly men on motorcycles, who will go and support vulnerable children if they're being harassed or bullied at school. And sometimes they'll just do that by showing up, which, can help boost the confidence of that child and just help make them feel safe. A GoFundMe page set up to help with funeral costs has raised $28,000, and Ms. Benedict says she plans to donate most of the money to the LGBTQ anti-bullying organizations. Next had a light in them that was so big. They had so many dreams. I want their light to keep shining for everyone. That light was so big and bright and beautiful, and I want everyone to remember Next that way. So just tragic, tragic story. So there's still a little bit more to this. So the chief of the Cherokee Nation has now offered the family of Next the support and resources of the Cherokee Nation. So Next was not Cherokee, as the Oklahoma, as the independent article states, but they were a resident of a Cherokee Nation. So the chief said, the First Lady and I mourn the tragedy with Nex's family, friends, and the larger community. We have offered Cherokee Nation Marshal Service support to Owasso PD as it investigates Nex's death. So lots of support from that community, which is wonderful, and also not surprising that Nex was indigenous and a target of this hate, as is all too often the case. And here's how a lot of the news sources were covering this story. Is every news source in Oklahoma transphobic garbage? This is really gross. 16-year-old Owasso student who died unexpectedly was laid to rest. 16-year-old Owasso student laid to rest after unexpected death. Owasso High School student laid to rest after unexpected death. Funeral held for 16-year-old Owasso student after unexpected death. From all these different, that's News on 6, Tulsa World, KJRH, and Fox 23. The death was unexpected, but we all know the cause. And none of them are mentioning that. None of them are mentioning why Nex was targeted. That it was the bullying, that it was the violence. Of course, none of them are mentioning that. Oh, no. It's all the same biases that we see in the news time and time again, like even as something with what's happening over in Gaza and how it's always covered from the vantage point of Israel, the harm Hamas is causing Israel, and yet they'll never mention the harm that's being done to the Palestinians. This is the same type of bias going on right here. So Joy Henderson on Twitter, she incited such hatred. I'm a community that so she incited such hate. She incited such hatred in a community that a young non-binary Cherokee child was viciously beaten and left to die. So they weren't Cherokee, but they were on the Cherokee Nation, and it was down here. They were indigenous. Some days people need to be called the C word, and this is one of those days. So here's Chaya Raichik crying. The media blamed a murder on me, and now I'm getting death threats. I've been reliably informed this is stochastic terrorism. Yeah. All the stochastic terrorism that I dish out, how dare it comes back to bite me. Yes, Chaya Raichik, stochastic terrorism is happening, but you're the one inflicting it. You're just suffering consequences of inflicting that stochastic terrorism. My heart does not break for you. In Drinnen, it's horrifying that it doesn't seem to occur to Chaya to offer condolences to the family of the non-binary teenager who was reportedly murdered by their classmates in a high school bathroom before she plays the victim card. It does occur to her to misgender them, though. So even after Nex's death, Chaya Raichik is still inflicting harm on this child and on the memory of this child. And this is something that people should just be aware of. So Elizabeth Cadwell had tweeted out, I talked in person to Nex's mother, who said the family is being harassed for using Nex's birth name in their obituary. She asked for understanding because the family was still learning about Nex's preferences. Yeah. From everything that I've been able to see from the article and stuff, Nex was very supported at home, and it can be challenging, but the tombstone will have Nex's name on it. But sometimes, you just want a place to grieve without having to answer so many other questions to family members at the same time. And, just take that time to grieve. Yeah, heavy story. But it's important that we go over them and we acknowledge them, and we know the cause. It's trying to figure out, like, how do we fight back against this stochastic terrorism? How do we push back against the right? One thing I've been saying for a long time is we need more left-wing influencers, more left-wing people to, be populist and get out there. And we do have them, but they don't have nearly the same platforms as the right wing. And a lot of that has to do with money. The right wing has a lot of money being dished out to being whatever. Like, if I wanted to do a right wing turn like that, I'd have so much money, because they're paying to keep the system that benefits them. It's an investment on their capitalistic, patriarchal, colonial institute. And it's one that pays back tenfold. Even if, like, Steven Crowder's channel ends up sinking or one of their influencers sink, the damage has been done already. They've already gotten what they want from these people. So any one of the right-wing channels can not make it, but they have enough money to just keep on throwing it at all these different places to seeing which ones, succeed and get a name out there, and to artificially bump their numbers, and to have the advertisements on YouTube, and to get into people's feeds and all that sort of stuff. Like, for me, with no money and being on the left-wing politics, breaking through the YouTube algorithms, I'm not sure that's going to happen. Luckily, I don't need much to get by. So if I have wonderful people like you in my audience, liking, sharing, subscribing, all that sort of stuff, every little bit helps. And, my motivation to do this is not money. But, I still do need the money to pay bills. But as long as I have enough to get by, then I'll continue to do this. I'll only stop doing this if I'm forced to, because I need to get, like, some other source of income that would interfere with this. Which, at this point, I don't think I could ever get a normal job again, just given my political leanings and my outspokenness and stuff like that. People don't like me. People like me on in their companies. One's willing to point out, it's like, if they're being, horrible in a situation or something. They don't like outspoken people. They want people to just conform to company rules and stuff of that sort. And I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time getting along with people in office culture and things of that sort. I don't play office politics well because I'm very political, but not in the way that they want. Yeah. I'm fine being my own boss on this. Let's check the Sandbox. Da, 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 da. Azera Wanger? It was not a fight, it was an assault. Yeah. I seriously doubt Nex did anything. You know, it wasn't started by Nex. They were just targeted. Atticus Among Us, that sounds borderline negligent homicide. Yeah, I hope the school gets sued to hell for what they did. It was their responsibility to keep Nex safe, and they didn't do that. You know, with any sort of head injury, you need to be calling an ambulance. Let's see. Bad lefty, Chaya Raichik has blood on her hands again, but in my opinion, she will gladly dance knee-deep in the blood of our LGBTQ plus children and young people. Sorry if that's a bit much. You're not wrong. Chaya is getting all the fame and attention she wants from being just a horrible, horrible person. And she's so narcissistic that she's okay. Like she's psychopathic to be doing this just to keep herself in the news, to get attention to her. It is disgusting. But yeah, I look at Nex and I see somebody who is able to live the life I wasn't, taken away from them, to know themselves at that age. And it breaks my heart. It's the same like when I went to the Pride Festival here in my area in June. Little kids with non-binary flags. They know who they are, and I never had that. And I can't imagine what my life would have been like had I known at that age that there was such a thing as non-binary. I don't know how I would have developed. It's something I wish, I could go back in time and tell myself. And then just seeing these kids, and they know who they are. And it fills my heart with joy to see that. And then to see it taken away so violently, it kills me. They had a chance at a life that I just couldn't have imagined. And it was taken away from them. All because of hateful, bigoted people. My dogs are goth. Kids hear this hatred at home from their parents. At that age, yeah. That's where they're getting it from for the most part. That or the school officials and Chaya Raichik and now social media, YouTube. That sort of thing is where they're getting a lot of it from. But it's really on parents to try to counter that. But, I remember when I was a kid hearing another child tell like a racist joke, and it would always start by, "My daddy said." It's learned behavior from home, which is just, when Gen Z actually gets old enough to start having children of their own and stuff. Can't imagine the supportive households for a change, and that will continue to grow. It will have ripple effects far beyond the LGBTQ plus community. because it's not just accepting queer people, but it's accepting all people for who they are, no matter their background and all that sort of stuff. And there's no going back. We're going to have hard times, but there is no going back. There is reason to hope. Yeah, I can't even imagine telling my teachers, some people here are mentioning teachers, talking to my teachers about this sort of thing, even back when I was in high school. But like there were teachers that I did turn to at times when I needed someone safe to talk to because of what was happening in my home life. And just to have that support. Teachers aren't paid enough. There, a lot of teachers are mostly amazing people. Unfortunately, there are some really horrid teachers too, but to me, you don't go into that profession unless you really, love children and want to see them grow and develop. And you have to have such a big heart, such a big heart. I would never have the patience for it. I don't like children. Even when I was a child, I never liked children. I didn't like other children, even back then. Teachers are heroes. They really are. Let's see. Let's see. Brenda Knoll. The Christian right claims to worship an infinite God and yet reject anything that doesn't fit within their narrow worldview. Yeah, I hate when they always attach this to religion. Because, oh, well, people were made in the vision of God. And it's like, well, okay, then they were made queer because that's the way that God made them. Or some people try to claim that God doesn't even have a gender, that God transcends all that sort of stuff. And yet, as soon as there's somebody who's queer, it's like, oh no, it's just, But I'm not keen on religious institutes. I'm all fine for religion, but to believe in a book that was written several thousand years ago, reinterpreted, recovered, and stuff like that, and rules to go by. Like, I'm not even keen on Americans living by the Constitution because of how old that was and what they wrote the rules for at the time. It makes no sense to go by that now. Yeah, America needs a new Constitution instead of trying to go back to something that was written hundreds of years ago for a world that they could have never envisioned happening. That's why I appreciate the Canadian Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and how it gets updated every now and then, as it should be. But it's the same with religions. To go based on a book written so long ago about a world they could have never perceived coming, it's just... Let's see. Dino Rancher. As a non-binary person, my heart aches. I remember how hard it was back when I was in school. Now this happens. Yeah. Brenda Knoll. I'm watching on my TV and my laptop. Do I count as 2 viewers? Well, it depends, because I watch on my TV, but that's because it's connected to my laptop, so that would be 1 view. But if it's a separate thing, then yes, then that would be 2 viewers. I'm also one of my viewers because I have the tab open. Oh, and I just want to thank everyone for going to the clips that I've been doing and helping me get them past 100 views. I've noticed that some of them were able to get bumped over that mark. It's an arbitrary number, I know, but it really does help in the algorithms if I can have consistent numbers at least around them. And so if I can get all the clips above 100 views, that really helps. So like every day I'm opening up separate tabs and watching them over, well, not watching them, but opening them and having them play on mute in another tab just to artificially boost those numbers. So if more people could do that, it'd be wonderful. It costs you nothing. And I'm not even asking you to watch them. Just literally click on them, mute them, open a different tab. You see, I run into a problem. I have to open up a different browser because since it's my YouTube channel, if I click on it and it's playing one of my videos and then I go to a different tab, it stops my video. It doesn't just keep on playing. So I have to open up a completely different browser in order to artificially boost my numbers that way. But if everyone can do that, that would be great. And so it won't take me another month to get one of them over 100 views. Let's see, let's see. Nina Canadian. It's almost like we practice tolerance when we don't apply old-timey norms. Acceptance makes for a better society. It does. I'm down to the bottom. Brenda Knoll, the Koch brothers were pushing for a constitutional convention. They only needed like 6 more states to make that happen. We can't let it happen with mega nuts lose in the US. Yep, we have a lot more fight in us that we have to keep on doing. It's celebrate the wins when we get them, but the fight continues. And speaking of that, I want to get to this. Because even here in Canada, as I keep on saying, we get heavily influenced by the states. And this is a problem, but we are fighting back.
At this school west of Toronto, keeping a well-stocked library is about more than just education.
This is not a really very advantaged community. And so a lot of my students aren't necessarily going to travel the world. And so books and story may be the only place that they're going to be able to do that.
But maintaining that range of voices for kids to experience has been increasingly under threat.
Yeah, book bans are a real threat here in Canada as well. Anti-LGBTQ plus people getting onto school boards is a real threat up here as well. So it's important whenever there's municipal elections, get involved. It's so important to get involved with the municipal elections. And especially when it comes to school boards, don't be afraid to run for those positions yourself because usually there's so little competition for them, especially if you're in like a mid-sized city or a smaller city. Well, there's a weird balance. If you're in a large city, then a lot of attention can be given to municipal elections and there might be more competition for a role. And if you're in a teeny tiny township or city, then everyone knows everyone and then it's really hard to run for anything that isn't pre-approved by the community. But if you're in like a small and mid-sized city, go check because sometimes these seats are left empty because people are so unplugged from politics. It's so easy to get involved with the school boards and potentially help make that change that we need to make sure that there aren't book bans and things of that sort. So whenever there is a municipal election, it's so important to get involved, at least just support the people who aren't trying to do the book bans. Support the people who aren't anti-LGBTQ+. But it's so important that we keep our schools a safe place for everyone.
Late last year, children's author Danny Ramadan had his book taken off the open shelves in the Waterloo Catholic schools. It was only available upon request and with the librarian providing the Catholic context. The book, A Tale of a Syrian-Canadian Girl and Her Family, featured a character based on Ramadan himself, a gay uncle.
I expected the book to be banned in Florida. I just was extremely shocked when I found out that it was banned here.
Librarians say the majority of challenges came from parents concerned about sexuality or gender-diverse themes in books.
There's even been a few cases where the challenges to books came from those very communities depicted in the books.
That's what happened to author David A. Robertson's book, The Great Bear. Robertson is Cree, and 2 Cree foster children are the heroes of his story. But some of the people who objected to it were also Indigenous, saying the book perpetuated harmful stereotypes. As a result, the book was temporarily pulled off the shelves in the Durham Region School Board.
Oftentimes, though, what happens is that the challenges come from a place where there hasn't been a real in-depth study of the literature being done, and so it's coming from a place of ignorance.
This expert says that no matter where the criticism comes from, Canadian school libraries have a robust review procedure that should be followed and knee-jerk reactions avoided.
You know, we're not trying to defend every book to remain in the system, but what we want is people to go through the right process.
Thanks in part to the media attention the bans got, both Robertson and Ramadan's books are now back on the shelves in the school boards that restricted them. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson.
Yeah. So fortunately, those books did get back, but it's important for people to stay plugged in to know when this sort of thing is happening. And if it's happening in the school board in your town, write to them, let them know that it's not okay to ban books simply because it mentions queer folks or things of that sort. And just, I wanted to do one silly related one. So here's Heels versus Babyface. There's a picture of a grocery store and there's some rainbow flags, and this person says, for fuck's sakes, I just want to buy some food. So apparently they're really upset that there's rainbow flags at a grocery store. And you know what? If that keeps him away, then I want a rainbow flag everywhere. If that's a barrier for bigots to get through, like if he wants to boycott that store because there's rainbow flags, please do. Please do. So that I can go there and know he's not going to be there. Just, wow. Like the sight of a rainbow makes them upset. That's how scared they are. Because, you know, you can see images of straight couples all over the place, images of heteronormative influence all over the place, but as soon as you see a rainbow flag, a pretty rainbow flag, oh no, the horror. Now, if this has a magical barrier to keep idiots like him away from grocery stores, I'd be happy to see him not be able to buy groceries ever again. And let's see. So, spent a lot of time on that story. I had a couple more stories that I wanted to get to. Like I said, there's one more kind of heavier story, and then one that's it's a little, I don't know. Well, it's important to cover. It's neither heavy nor light. Let's put it that way. But it's different. Let's put it, yeah, it's a different type of story. Something different that will probably demonetize this video. So please, if you can, become a patron. You'll understand when we get there. But just a couple news stories. Kind of because this is what Bam and I were talking about a bit when he was on my live stream. So, in Manitoba, man, 59, fatally shot by Winnipeg police following a mental health call. Officers called to detain man and take him to hospital for involuntary medical exam, Winnipeg Police Services. And that was, you know, just last week. Oh, but then there's this. Kitchener, Ontario man was having a mental health crisis when he was killed by police, says family. And this one is extra tragic because it was the brother of the man who was shot that called the police for help. Don't call police for mental health crises. It's just sad when there's no other alternative for some people, like they don't know where else to go. But all too often, if there's a mental health crisis and the police get involved, it just makes the situation worse. Apparently in this story, the man had a weapon. And so they're like, well, then the police had no choice. But the thing is that this actually went on for a couple days of the police having to come in and things of that sort. And it kept escalating and escalating and escalating. And if any part before then had been dealt with properly, have had the proper services in, then it wouldn't have led to the death of this person. And quite often when people are having mental health crises, it's a temporary thing. And, you know, the neighbors of this person said that he was quite nice the rest of the time, but if for some reason your medication, you can't get it, or it's not working anymore, or anything of that sort, you can have an episode, or if there's just overwhelming pressures, that shouldn't be a death sentence. But it is for far too many people in this country, because we always see, you know, police deaths in the States, and we're always, you know, overwhelmed by with how many are happening there. But people tend to forget that Canada is the second worst when it comes to that sort of thing, with equivalent countries on the OECD countries. And it's important to know. And if you have somebody in your life that you know who suffers from mental health crises every now and then, or can have episodes, it's important to talk to them when they're well, when they're stable, and go over what should be done when an episode happens. My closest friends know exactly what to do should I have an episode. They know one of the things they should not do is call 911. Do not send me to the hospital. Do not call police. Because we've talked about this, and it's something that quite often they want to know, so that when the time comes, if it comes, they can handle it in a way that will still be friends afterwards. It's getting late in the stream, and I don't really want to go over all the details of these stories. I just, again, wanted to point them out that this is 2 so far this year that I know about. There's probably more. It's a problem here in Canada. And then just reading the Popular and Now and news too is just devastating, you know. And stuff like, oh wow, I could have a live stream every night because, you know, I didn't think there would be that much in Canada to cover, but there's so much to cover in this country. Polyev says biological males should be banned from women's sports, change rooms, and bathrooms. That's what happens if we get the next conservative leader in. Although there is something very funny with Polyev right now that I'm going to bring it up on screen. Because it's funny, and I need that right now. Silly funny. Let's see, is it over here? I have to find it because it wasn't on one of my regular tabs. Just a sec. Oh, here we go. Move that over here. Then I can bring it back. I'm getting better with that. This is hilarious. So Pierre Polyev is a dork. He looks like a dork. He acts like a dork. He's so uncharismatic, but he's even doctoring photos now to profess his love. Notice a squared off jaw and the manly 4 o'clock shadow and the bigger muscles. So here's his actual picture, and here's the doctored photo. And even this one looks doctored as well. He's such a loser. And I know some people on the left will say, like, once people get to know who he is and stuff, nobody will vote for him because he's such an uncharismatic idiot. But no, he's still talking to that populist wing. He still has a chance of winning. So it's important that people pay attention to politics here in Canada. There's a good chance the Conservatives are going to get into power next, and we need to be prepared for that and start figuring out what to do. But I've shown videos of him before where it's quite clearly he's on a green screen, that everything is made up around him, that he's not even talking to a real audience, and everything about him is just becoming fake. Like, you know, it's basically, if he wins, it's just an AI generated conservative version of Pierre Poilievre. It won't actually be Poilievre who's running. It's just going to be an AI version of him. I just find that ridiculous. Like, talk about insecurity right there. Like, isn't that gender affirming looks right there? He's trying to affirm his gender by doing all this, I think is what it is. But yeah, it's hilarious. Anyway, I want to get on to the other story that I've been talking about. Let's see. And that other story I've been talking about has to do with porn. Porn in Canada. Canada porn. Homegrown Canadian pornification. Porn. I'm saying porn a lot because this is going to monetize this video by saying porn. Porn. Canada porn. Maple syrupy, drippy porn here in Canada is under threat. There are so many jokes about beavers right now, I gotta tell you. Let's go here. Okay.
Right. The owners of the website Pornhub are considering blocking access to Canadians.
Talk about a real cock block here.
This comes as a response to a Senate bill that would require age verification to access explicit sites. The legislation would require Canadians to verify their age to access porn online, citing concerns about minors having access to sexually explicit material. The bill doesn't specify how, but options include digital ID systems or facial recognition software.
The idea of needing facial recognition software to go onto a porn site. There's just so much wrong with that. I'm actually in support of Pornhub canceling, you know, to stop Canadians from enjoying themselves for a moment, just to get things under control here, because the idea of needing some sort of government ID to prove who you are in order to go on porn sites is not good. I understand, and this is why this topic is always very tricky to talk about. Yes, want to protect kids, don't want kids getting onto these sites, but there has to be other ways than uploading your government ID into these things, because it is like a hacker's dream come true to get access to this and start leaking information about what kind of porn people like. Not to mention, not everyone has a government ID. Not to mention, this isn't restricted to just porn sites, but any site that can have adult content. So even sites like Twitter might then require Canadians having to prove their ID in order to get onto these sites. And, you know, we should have a right to privacy. You know, we shouldn't have to do this. Adults should be free to access the sites that they want, you know, if it's you know, as long as it's not illegal stuff we're talking about. And this is, so I like that Pornhub is considering cock blocking Canadians to their site. You know, to there's a lot of jokes. Let's get on with the video. How about it?
Where measures that have prompted privacy concerns. Well, this is a talker. Ritesh Kotak is joining me now. He's a tech and cybersecurity expert. So, what do you make of Pornhub's argument here? Can you see both sides?
I can definitely see both sides. I think on the one hand,
That's Canadian news in a nutshell. Oh, both sides. Yep. Both sides. Yeah, that's Canadian news, except for when it comes to anything, you know, Gaza related, then it's nothing about both sides. But whenever it comes to liberal establishment and conservative establishment, it's always both sides.
this is a novel cause, the ability to ensure that only adults have access to adult content. But on the flip side is how on earth are we going to verify age without giving up personal identifiable information? And most likely, is this going to be some sort of where you have to upload government issued ID? Is
You know, maybe for porn sites, instead of facial recognition, they could have other sorts of recognition in order to get on, if you know what I mean.
this going to be something where you have to conduct facial recognition? And I'm sure that individuals that are visiting these sites want some level of anonymity. So it's kind of this balancing act between access to content.
He says that, like, you know, I imagine that some people who go on these sites, some people, they would want some anonymity. You know, I wouldn't know, but I imagine other people would.
And privacy with respect to age verification. And I don't know. I think that this is a very slippery slope.
How so?
What made that slope slippery, huh?
Well, here's the thing is that if I am forced to verify my age and I have to upload government issued ID, let's say my driver's license or passport. So I've now uploaded that onto a site or a third party site to verify my age. Well, there's going to be some sort of digital handshake that takes place between the site that identifies me and my age and Pornhub. So now individuals may potentially be able to mine, or if there's a data breach, know that what I'm doing online. And that in itself, I think, is extremely problematic.
What is the goal, do you think, of the Senate bill?
Well, I think the goal is noble in the sense of protecting young people or from explicit online material and ensuring that only individuals that are of age get access to it. Because there's obviously the brain is developing and being able to, if you're young and you're easily able to get access to extreme pornographic material. That there's clear issues with that with respect to minors. So that's the goal. The way you go about implementing the goal, if done incorrectly, actually creates more issues and problems in the future than solving a problem.
Like, here's where it can get a little bit tricky, because young people below the age of appropriateness, have always been finding ways to access adult content. And this is where, you know, proper sex education in school comes in really handy. Things about consent and real expectations and stuff. Because it's on the parents, for the most part, to make sure that their kids aren't accessing this. And there are some ways, I imagine, some ways on the internet to block children from these sites and whatnot. I don't have kids. I'm glad I don't have kids because I have no idea how I'd prevent them from finding this stuff. But it's important to, you know, get a culture where yeah, this is a hard one to talk about because it can be misinterpreted in so many ways. But like adult image of what porn is even is quite horrible. Like when I was on a dating site and a guy was asking me like, oh, would I be doing this and this and this and this? And I'm like, you know, only porn stars do that. And then he's like, oh, but all the girls look so happy when they're doing it. And it's like, well, if you pay me $1,000, I'd put on a smile too. Like it's just there's porn gives men really poor expectations of what sex is actually like, and there's people aren't going out as much as we used to. Tend to stay at home behind the computer. And it's important to have human interactions and human expectations as to what people do. But because a lot of the porn that children get into is really brutal. And there has to be ways to prevent them from getting into that. That is for sure. Because the type of porn that's popular right now, I don't understand it. I don't watch, I'm not a porn watcher myself. I have it doesn't really appeal to me. But as soon as you go on the site, the type of porn that's available to you, it is just disgusting for the most part. And, that's a cultural thing that has to be worked on for adults and children. Because, okay, I'll let you guys in on a little something. I once worked as phone sex operator. And for the most part, I didn't have a problem with it. It wasn't that big of a deal for me. But I couldn't make a career out of it because 80% of the calls were men wanting to do daddy-daughter calls. And I'm not just talking about some dynamic. I'm talking about men who had this fantasy of raising a virginal daughter, and then when she's ready for him to take that from her, and I could not do those calls, which meant I couldn't make money from being a phone sex operator. And the fact that the vast majority of calls were like that, the fact that when you go into stores, sex stores that still sell porn, the biggest section is the barely legals. Okay, that is a cultural thing that needs to be worked on. There's something wrong with society if those are the popular things, and that needs to be addressed, because that is wrong. Because there's a whole lot of freaky shit I'd be willing to talk about on the phone when I was doing that job, but I could not do that, because to me that is just so wrong. And that is what you see when you get onto a lot of these porn sites, is right away this most hardcore, forced stuff. Like a lot of the porn I just can't watch because they all look too young to me. And it's so disturbing that this is what the mass of people out there are consuming the most. And that, there has to be a cultural shift in that in order for that to change. But yeah, like there has to be a better way of protecting children, but still allowing adults to have the freedom to go to these sites and have their privacy protected. Because like when Ashley Madison, that was the dating site for people who were in relationships, when that got breached and all that information out, so much bad happened from that. Could you imagine what would happen if somebody hacked the sites and then started to release the porn habits of everyone? Wow. Just like in a lot of cases that would be very eye-opening, and a lot of right-wingers I think would be exposed for the hypocrites they are. But it could also do a lot of harm to people where there shouldn't be. And yeah, it is just adults should have the freedom to go to these sites without having to upload government ID. Because, even if they hack the system and it's not released, they could hold people for ransom, saying you either pay up or else we will release this and we have your government ID so we can track you down. Like, it's just, so much wrong can happen from this.
Is anyone
Let's get back to this.
Successful verifying age or identity through online apps or sites? I'm thinking about online gambling, for example.
There are ways of securely identifying yourself. This is what we call identity management. We see this with corporate networks being able to get on securely on those networks by having some sort of authentication mechanism. We've seen this with banking sites or even government sites where you use a third party, such as your banking. Your bank to verify who you are and be able to gain access to particular services, usually government-related services. So there have been ways of successfully implementing it. However, this is a whole other realm and is a lot more complex than traditional ways of identifying individuals. And again, if done incorrectly, extremely problematic.
On the business side of things, is Pornhub hurting itself by blocking access from Canadians?
Yes, if they block Canadians from having access, and this is a company that I believe is headquartered in Canada, that obviously has a major blow. But clearly, this is a company that has international reach. I don't know what percentage of their revenue is actually Canadian, but they're taking a stance here, and the stance is this this Senate bill, so S210, is problematic. And if it's passed, it's going to make it impossible for us to essentially operate, is what Pornhub is saying. There are going to be fines, administrative monetary penalties that are going to be attached to non-compliance as well. I believe it's $250,000 for the first offense, and then $500,000 for each subsequent offense. So if this is passed, if they're found that they didn't do everything possible to verify identity, then it's going to cost them significantly, and maybe the potential fines and costs is just not worth it, based on the revenue share within Canadian markets.
Ritesh Kotak is a tech and cyber.
Yeah, so it is a very complicated situation, but basically, then the companies themselves would be charged if if too many people can get through, and it would just make the business here unviable. So then, yeah, it would make sense that they would block Canadians from being able to get onto their sites when that risk is too high. And there's a lot of bills in Canada right now when it comes to internet security that are kind of similar, not even to do with porn. And I've been warning about them for a while. Things that would make content creating very, very difficult. And people are still usually too distracted by what's happening in the States to know that it's happening up here too. Because some sites can be held responsible for the stuff uploaded to them. Yeah, it is complicated. I can get into more detail into it in another live stream. But right now, just want to stick to the porn. Let's make this about the porn. Talk about the porn. No more Pornhub. That will depend on what happens with a Senate bill. The owners of Pornhub say blocking access to Canadians is among options they're considering as they persuade parliamentarians to reject an approach for age verification online in a controversial Senate bill. You know, I'm doing this all wrong. I've already admitted to you guys now that I've done the phone sex and I'm talking about porn right now, so really I should be changing my voice for this article and reading it in a more fitting manner. Wouldn't you agree? We've taken different options in different jurisdictions, said Solomon Friedman, a partner and vice president of compliance at Ethical Capital Partners, which owns Pornhub's parent company. I don't want to speculate on the bill. It's in its current state. We're going to committee to ensure that the wrong legislation doesn't get passed. A House of Commons committee is set to study legislation proposed by independent Senator Julie that would require Canadians to verify their age to access porn online. The bill outlines a range of concerns about minors having access to sexually explicit material, including the potential to develop pornography addictions and the reinforcement of harmful gender stereotypes. There's some parts I'm not going to read in that voice, let's just say. Let's go back to that voice. Here we go. It proposes companies that host such material ensure young people cannot access it under threats of fines between $250,000 and $500,000. The legislation doesn't specify how sites should verify a user's age, but options include establishment of a digital ID system or services that can estimate an individual's age based on visual scan of their face. Wait a sec. You want... Oh, that is not good. Who wants to be on a site that will actually scan to try to tell you how old you are? I don't need that. I don't want some sort of thing to scan to try to guess how old I am. Not based on my face. I don't need that. Let's see. Okay. Okay, let's get back to the voice. Such suggestions have prompted widespread concern from privacy experts about the overarching impacts from the risks associated with asking Canadians to share personal information with an external provider, if you know what I mean, to the use of measures such as facial recognition technology. I like that. External provider. Others have warned age verification could lead to stifling of free expression, as some companies would likely rather block access to their sites. Others, they warn, could simply find ways to skirt the rules. Skirt them? Examples of laws abroad. Sitting in a cafe in downtown Ottawa last week, Friedman said his company shares concerns about minors accessing Pornhub, one of the largest porn sites on the internet. Let's see. I don't want to be in that voice for certain parts of this article, and I didn't read the article ahead of time. We want no children on our platform whatsoever. Agreed. Not only is that from a moral standpoint, he says, but also a commercial one. Yeah, let's just skip that one. Darn it, this could have been a fun one to just do continuously in that voice. But, you know, like I said, there's just some times where it's not appropriate. Okay, I don't think I could read much more of this article in that voice and still have it be okay. So let's just go back to the main camera. Yes, there has to be more done to... It is one of those situations. Yes, we want to keep children safe. There's no argument about that, but we also want to keep, you know, adults free to access adult content without the risk of their privacy being violated. There's a whole lot of issues with that, and there's no one fix to it. Like, it has to be proper education, societal change, proper security measures online, proper, you know, parental guidance and all that sort of stuff. Like, there is no one quick fix to this. But because this could have... The problem with putting this legislation through too fast too is the implications that we won't see until it's too late, such as, well, this also applies to sites like Twitter and YouTube because there could be adult content on there, or it could apply to sites that people looking for information on harm or supports and stuff. You know, you might also need to verify your ID on that, which would, you know, not everyone has government IDs. So how do you do that then? And you shouldn't have to have your, you know, government ID. Like, could you imagine your government ID having to be attached to Twitter? Like, it is, wow, that is so wrong. So many ways. Anyway, let's check the Sandbox. Talking about Canadian porn on here. Porn, porn, porn. Yep. Totally demonetize this video with all the porn talk. And if anybody pays for a super chat right now, I will do it in my phone sex voice. It's not going to be an every time thing, so if you want it, now's the time. My dogs are goth. Families need to make a backup plan when their loved one is having a crisis. Yeah, and we need more mental health supports in this country, like places people can go to get the help, the counseling, the medication they need, because mental health is not covered under our universal health care. And if we had proper mental health supports in this country, then there'd be less people, there'd be less people in crises where their family members feel there's no other choice but to call the police. Brenda Knoll looks like DeSantis in real life and Bruce Campbell in the doctor photo. Does look like Bruce Campbell, sort of, yeah. It looks like that meme of the alpha man, like what is the Chad or whatever? Like the guy with the square jaw and the beard, the cartoon drawing or whatever. He kind of looked like that, but pathetic. Looney Tunes 9000, Canada porn? Oh, is that what it took to get your attention? Brenda Knoll, how many liquor ads are rolling around Canada on the side of public buses? Yes, liquor ads are very available to underage people, but you can't really advertise porn in public. That's not something I want to see on the side of the bus. Have it in the bus stop or something, and it's like, is your bus behind and you have a few minutes to kill? Well, do we have the site for you? Oh. Brenda Knoll, I was just doing research. I wasn't actually watching it. No. Well, for me, the rare times I have watched porn, it is because I'm trying to figure out what humans do. I'm too autistic for a lot of porn. It just doesn't appeal to me. It's more of a morbid curiosity than anything else. And the type of porn I like just doesn't seem to exist. My dogs are goth. Pornhub scaled back what they would allow on their site already. Yes. Articus among us. Professional lover is my preferred term. Yes, sex work is work. My dogs are goth, and phone sex was something I've done. I have a kitty cat. Up you come. Let's see. BKK. Oh man, I came back at the wrong time. But at least you came. No, I'm not going to finish that sentence. I'll leave you to finish it. Bad lefty, but how many people call these lines? I hope it's self-selecting for weirdos. There's a variety of people who would call, but it's basically, if you can't get the porn you want, then you call into these services to try and get it, to see the comfort level of the operator, to see how young they would be willing to play. I got asked that question, and it's like, yeah, legal. Yeah, it is. Some people go there because they need an outlet, like a healthy outlet, like an older gentleman who didn't, know how to date and get out there and was a widow and things of that sort. That's totally fine. Or just some people exploring some fantasies and stuff. But other people were using it as a stepping stone, which is horrifying. And how do you tell the difference? I do have a couple of interesting stories from my time there, but I don't think any of them are appropriate for my live streams. No super chats. Now's the time if you want to hear it in the phone sex voice. Brenda Knoll, I got an email that they wanted me to send money somewhere. They'd release all my naughty photos and videos online. I thought, gee, you're going to be slaving away at Photoshop to create first. Yeah. Go ahead, check my hard drive. Look at my history. You're not going to find anything interesting. Unless you find things like, the science behind an earthquake interesting, or politics in general interesting, or art techniques. Do that. And what other things? Like, I usually just Google a lot of politics and Canadian news stories and things of that sort, and things related to it. Cat health, sometimes if I have a question about kitty cat, I'll Google that. Yeah, there's not much interesting stuff. BKK, I don't know. I mean, I knew there were men with these types of desires, but most of the calls, ugh, yeah. It really did limit the calls that I would accept because of that. And it was just... it was disturbing. Because I know, in the BDSM community, there's the daddy dom daughter relationship, and that's just, it's a role play thing, and it's not about the child. It's about, the man being a protector, the person who does everything, the person to set rules and things of that sort, and the woman just being in a more servitude role and things of that sort. It was more about the roles played, it wasn't an age thing per se. But what was happening on these phone calls was not that. It was disturbing. BKK, Brenda, I photoshopped myself with an IG influencer body and send it to them. Have it, boss. Yeah, if people want to make up porn about me, it's the bodies are probably going to be far nicer than what you would see under my clothes. Brenda Knoll, and VPN service will massive signups if Pornhub gets blocked in Canada. Yep, there are ways around it. VPN is definitely one of those ways. Not to mention there's a bazillion porn sites out there, so Pornhub goes, then it just means the other ones are going to get more traffic, and it also means then that some people might go to more sketchy porn sites with porn that it could be a little bit more questionable. Some people seem to be liking my voice. Yeah, it's just for you guys. I'll do that sexual voice when we're talking about porn. you imagine that app like, yeah, you are definitely old enough to be here. And while you're at it, here's your life and like some sort of service for seniors or something like that. Like that could be another way for ad agencies just to get an idea of people's ages and stuff. And so suddenly it's like, I just logged into a porn site and now, I'm having these ads for, I don't know, something seniors need. For Metamucil. Logged into Pornhub, get ads for Metamucil. They could tailor ads to people's perceived ages. Let's see. BKK, y'all saw a video of a daughter realizing her elderly mother on a fixed income got scammed out of their life savings. Make sure your parents know to demand proof of debt before sending money. Rebecca Watson just did a video on scammers. I always recommend checking out her channel. So go check out her channel because she also just, talks about how anyone could potentially get scammed because scammers target people, they tailor how they target people. And it's only a matter of time before they can find everyone's weakness. So it's important to stay vigilant. So that's Rebecca Watson. Go check out her channel on YouTube. No super chats. I guess that voice wasn't that impressive. Let's see. Looney Tunes 9000, send the super chats. Yeah. That was just one of my voices. My dogs are goth. Roleplay common in the BDSM community. Is that sarcasm? Yeah, I'm nearing the end of chat, so. Brenda Knoll, but the right wing doesn't want kids taught about sex in age-appropriate ways. Makes them easier targets. Yeah, if more kids knew more, then a lot of adults would be in a lot of trouble, and they should be. Got a cute kitty on my lap. What more could you need in life? I don't know if you can hear him purr. He's so cute. It's showing up on my mic, so maybe you guys are hearing him purr. Oh. Abernathy has been such a pain lately. He's just been... Yeah, Abernathy has just been such a pain lately. This is Lanier. But but he recently discovered push pins in the wall that I have pictures hanging up with. And so every ones that he can reach, he will actually take out and start playing with them, which I have to be careful of because I don't want to step on them, but also I don't want him swallowing it. And so I've had to remove all the push pins, and so I've actually had to take down some of my artwork because a lot of my artwork I don't have properly framed yet because I don't have the money for all the frames. But yeah. He's been such a terrible two lately, that cat. But he is a sweetheart. When he wants to be. The rest of the time, really annoying. Okay, well, it's past 8:30, so let's start winding this down, wrapping this up. So, yeah, I'm still working on paying off Frodo's ongoing vet bills. Any help with that is greatly appreciated. You can do that by the link in the PayPal description below, or if you're Canadian, an e-transfer is much better. Let's see. I have an art piece that I'm going to be showing people in a little bit that is, oh my god, I love it so much. You guys are going to be so thrilled when you see it. It is an amazing drawing. I can't wait to show it off to everyone. So stay tuned for that. But if you want to see my art in the meantime, go to SandeeLovas.com to see what I have available. And also share the site. I don't know if there's a way that I could post it that people could have access to it, but I have like little flyers that people could potentially print off and take to their vets and pet stores and stuff maybe, so that to help advertise my art, because that's the biggest problem, is trying to find ways to advertise when it comes to that sort of stuff. If you can, please become a patron, especially when I do shows like this one. We're just saying porn all the time because that demonetizes the video when you talk about dirty, dirty things. So, but only if you can. Like, I don't want people to sacrifice what they need in order to help me out. So only if you have the money, do what you can when you can. Every little bit helps. I'm on these still, but primarily this one. This way, this one, right there, that one. The Hostile Fart Sauna. Twitter. I am primarily on there. If you do email LeftoftheBox, keep in mind, it might be a while to get back to you because I have a hard time remembering to check and to get back to people. So please forgive me with that. Share, like, please comment under all the videos. It helps in the algorithm. Please go back to the clips that I've been posting and watch them, or like, you don't have to watch them, just click on them in a different tab, mute it, give it the extra views. Every little bit helps, and that doesn't cost a thing. Leaving comments doesn't cost a thing. Reply to other people's comments, it doesn't cost anything. And that all helps in the algorithm. I don't know if I'm going to have a show on Friday. I think 3 shows a week might be pushing it, but we'll see how I feel. If I don't have a show on Friday, I will be having one on Sunday. And hopefully I can get the clips up and everything. So thank you for everyone for coming out. Thank you to all you wonderful mods for keeping the Sandbox clean of cat turds. Yeah, I guess nobody wanted to hear my sexy voice anymore, so that's okay. That's okay. Appreciate you all. So, did I say everything? I think I said everything. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.